All right. Last section in chapter 2 to 8, and we're solving equations and formulas. And this one's very similar to what we've done already, but this time we're going to solve for a given variable and use formulas for real world problems. That's our objective. But the only difference here is we're going to solve equations, but you're not going to get an answer of, say, x equals 8. You're going to get maybe x equals 2y plus 4 all over 9. You have a different looking answer because there's going to be more than one variables here. So you're solving for a specific variable. So how are we going to do that? First, we're going to use the same method as solving an equation. So addition, subtraction, then dividing or multiplying, whatever you need to do, inverse operations. And we're trying to isolate a given variable. Still trying to isolate a given variable. It's just there's a different variable with us. Okay? So you might see a problem that says, say, 4m plus 2n equals p. Okay, well, and there's more than one variable here, and they may say solve for m. So they're going to pick one of those and tell you to solve for m. Okay, so in terms of n and p, you're basically going to look and try to solve for this m right here. Okay, so let's do some examples of it, or first let's tell you how to do it, and then we'll give us some examples. All right, so here's our step-by-step process. So we're going to do that. Let's go here. All right, first, let's circle the variable you're looking for. I mean, you can circle it, you can highlight it, underline it. Just locate it for sure that you're trying to solve for. They'll tell you that. Then or add or subtract to move terms without the variable to the other side of the equation. So we're trying to, again, isolate it. So other terms that aren't involved, move them to the other side of the equation. And then you might have to use the distributive property, and I put parentheses around this to pull values, common factors in all terms, if there's more than one term with your variable, and that's if needed. That's kind of the next step where we're headed, so I'm going to try to skip some of those problems, but if needed, only if needed on that one. The next step is to multiply or divide to isolate the given variable. So again, what's happening to the variable if you have to multiply it or divide it to isolate it and get it by itself. And then finally, simplify if we need to, if there's any simplifying that we can do. So let's do a couple practice problems here and show you how it works. So number one, this looks exactly like the example we just did with your m's and n's. So this one says solve 4m minus 3n equals 8, and we're solving for m. So again, the first thing I want to do is I want to try to locate the variable. There it is, m. That's what we're solving for. That's the only one there. Okay? So I want to add or get rid of everything else on that side. So I'm going to try to get rid of this negative 3n, put it on the other side of the equation. So by doing that, I'm going to add 3n to both sides. Okay? So what's that going to do for my problem? I'm going to have this 4m still over here on the left. On the right, we know those cancel out. And so I'm equal to 8 plus 3n. Okay? And that is all it is. We can't add those together. They're separate terms. It's not 11n. It's nothing but 8 plus 3n because we can't add or subtract those different terms. So now I just have 4m equals 8 plus 3n. Again, I'm just going to kind of show you. I'm locating the variable again. Here's m. We're still here. And I want to isolate it. I want to get it by itself. So what's happening to m? It's being multiplied by 4. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by 4 on both sides. And that's going to cancel this out and this out. I'm going to be left with m equals 8 plus 3n over 4. And that's where it gets a little tricky or a little different. We haven't seen an answer quite like this, but this is your answer. We can't simplify that anymore, so that's our answer right there, 8 plus 3n over 4. Okay, let's try this one down below, number 2, because there's one subtle difference in there. And we've got k minus 2 over 5 equals 11j, and we're solving for k. So again, the first thing, I'm just going to locate my variable I'm solving for. There it is, k. All right. So you might notice that there's a subtraction problem here, but remember, it's part of this fraction. So let's make sure we get rid of the other stuff and get rid of this fraction form. So I'm going to multiply this by 5 on both sides, because that's I know is going to get rid of this 5 here. So on the left side, I'm just dealing with k minus 2, and then equals 11j times 5. Now, this is actually a math problem I can do, and this is what I said, the subtle difference. Remember up here, we couldn't really do anything else with this 8 plus 3n. Well, 11j times 5 we can do because it's multiplication. So 11j 5 times would be 55j. So we can actually multiply that. So it would be 55j. And then I still want to isolate that k. I still want to make sure that we're isolating this. So because this is the variable we're trying to get by itself, or isolate. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And now I've got a k all alone on the left, and it's going to equal 55j plus 2. And that would be our answer. Okay? And you could write it 2 plus 55j. And up here, you could write 3n plus 8 over 4. That doesn't make a difference, but that's a simplified answer for it. Okay? Let's do a practice problem with a word problem here. We've got a car's fuel economy, and they're going to call that capital E, and that's your miles per gallon. That's given by the formula E equals m over g, where m is the number of miles driven and g is the number of gallons of fuels used. So they give you a lot of stuff here. So let's solve, and they solve the equation, solve the formula for m. So I'm just going to take that first initial formula and write it down. So I've got E equals m divided by g. Okay? And they're telling me they want me to solve for m. So here's the m up here. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for there. So E equals m over g. So how do I get rid of the g, basically? What's happening to it? It's dividing into m. So what's the opposite of divide? What's the inverse operation of divide? Well, it's multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides by g. And so I know this, that when on the right side, that's going to cancel. And I'm going to be left with m. And we've got g times e on the other sides. And that's it. So our new formula solving for m is now m equals g times e. All right. Now, part B. So part A was just solving the formula for m. Part B, now we're actually going to use that formula that we just got, the newer formula, to solve a problem. So it says if Claudia's car has an average fuel consumption of 30 miles per gallon and she used 9.5 gallons, how far did she drive? So we're going to take a look at this stuff. I'm going to use that formula, m equals g times e. And I'm going to plug some values in now. It's just going to be plugging values in. That's why we solve for m up here in part A, is to make life easier for us here. So the first part we give us is average fuel consumption. It's 30 miles per gallon. Well, what is the average fuel consumption? Well, it says right here miles per gallon, and that says it up here as well. So I know that's my E part. So I can substitute that 30 in for E. So I know right away this is going to be my E value. And then down here it says she used 9.5 gallons. Well, that's pretty obvious that that's going to be your G for gallons. And they want to find out how many miles we're going. So we're going to plug, this is going to be our G. So now we're going to just plug those numbers in. So now I can go M equals, for G I've got 9.5. And for my capital E, I've got 30. I'm using parentheses here because I've got a decimal here. I don't want to use the multiplication dot because I got a decimal here. It might mess me up, so I'm using parentheses. And now when I do this multiplication here, I'm just going to get M equals 285. And what are we talking about here? What does the M represent? Well, M represents the number of miles driven. And how far did she drive? So we're talking 285 miles would be our final answer. Okay? We'll skip this one here, dimensional analysis. We can talk about this a little more in class. This is just changing, converting different measurements. And now we're on to our lesson summary here. So what does it mean to solve for a variable? What does it mean to solve for a variable? That's your lesson summary. And here's your practice problem. Solve for W. 2K equals 3W minus 1. And we're solving for W. So W is the case here where we're trying to solve for that one. Okay, that is it for section 2.8. It's also the last section in chapter 2. So bring your questions to class. We'll get to work on this, and we'll be ready to roll.